Dr. Nardi here, and in this video, we're going to talk about a few different topics. We're going to talk about how your research question guides your design and how the type of question you write infers what kind of analysis you're going to do. We're also going to talk about specialized non-experimental research. This is non-manipulation of variables or random assignment. We're also going to talk about time series analysis. And basically, this is analysis of data points collected over a period of time repeatedly. And we'll also talk about developmental designs and how they typically involve manipulation of variables, but an intervention may be added in certain instances. We'll talk about longitudinal designs. We'll talk about following participants over a long period of time. We'll talk about cross-sectional designs, and this is different populations measured at the same time point. Cohort sequential designs. Cohorts are selected at different time points in time and followed longitudinally. Correlational research studies the relationship among variables. So researchers are interested to the extent in which variables are associated or related with one another. And usually we put these variables in categories or in some kind of quantities. And if you think back to your stats course, we're interested in to see how variables are related, if they're positively correlated with each other, if they're negatively correlated with each other, or if they're not correlated at all. Now, correlational research is an umbrella term that includes a bunch of different approaches, and it's a catch-all for regression analysis and multiple regression analysis and even more advanced data collection techniques just beyond just correlation itself. So what does correlation data tell us? It really tells us how two variables are related without intervention, without manipulation. The great thing about correlational research is we can measure a vast number of variables. So we could conduct large surveys and we could explore different phenomenon and we can get lots and lots of participants. We also like to do correlational research where it's not really ethical or feasible to manipulate variables of interest. Now we do have concerns of internal and external validity. So generally speaking, internal validity is the ability of a research design to test the hypothesis adequately, and external validity is how you can apply this results more broadly to other studies. So when you conduct a correlational study, you want to carefully develop, implement whatever procedure you're doing. If you're doing surveys, you want to make sure you craft these surveys very well, maybe do a pilot study. If you're going to do interviews, make sure that you have a very, very well-trained interview, and you could do very structured interviews where you have all the questions ahead of time. You could also do semi-structured interviews where you ask follow-up questions, but you have some preset questions. There's a couple drawbacks to correlational research, and that's the lack of your ability to infer causality. Now remember, you can never draw cause and effect with correlational research. There's also a third variable problem. Just because two variables are related doesn't mean that one caused the other. There could be another lurking variable, as we call it, that is, mixing up your results and causing you to get some kind of association. And because there's no causation, we can't claim directionality. We can't say variable A caused variable B or variable B caused variable A. Also with correlational designs, we can use pre-existing groups. So these are based on some kind of demographic characteristics such as gender or affiliation to some kind of group. And we can also incorporate some kind of designs with some experimental component. So usually we have these like quasi-experimental designs where we have an existing group, but we also can include one or more manipulated variables. And remember, to be a true experiment, you need manipulated variables and random assignment. So what kind of statistics do we use for correlational designs? Well, we could use the Pearson's R for correlation. We could use a simple or multiple regression. A couple things to keep in mind about how we use different words when we're doing correlational design. we don't use the term independent and dependent variable. We use predictor and criterion variable, respectively. You could also use a analysis of variance, and it's very similar when you do it for a quasi-experimental design. So you just have you're evaluating the difference between two or more groups, but remember here you can't infer causation. You can also compare group differences in ranked data, and you could use Spearman's ranked order analysis. It's kind of parallel to Pearson's R for non-parametric cases, and basically it tests the association between two ranked variables or between a ranked variable and a measurement variable. Now, there are data reduction techniques that are a little beyond this video, but you could use factor analysis as a way to kind of get at some underlying constructs and maybe remove some questions and really explore a data set. So that'd be exploratory factor analysis when you're trying to maybe develop a new instrument and seeing which items kind of fit together or are correlated with each other on a certain dimension. You can also do confirmatory factor analysis, and that's when you're trying to confirm an already existing instrument. We can also talk about specialized non-experimental designs, and these are measurements that are taken over multiple data points in time, and these are correlational in nature. Occasionally, there is some manipulation of variables. A great one is an interrupted time series design. So basically, there's a measurement made before and after some event that occurs naturally. It could be a maybe highly visible event like a natural disaster, some kind of social upheaval, some kind of criminal event. It could be changes in laws, just like if they decide to sell alcohol on Sunday all of a sudden. So we usually look at these to see if something changed before and after the event. Usually see this with policymakers to see maybe if their policy is working. So the good thing about time series designs is they're use naturally occurring groups. So people and their behaviors are in their natural surroundings, right, outside of the research laboratory. So it's high in that ecological validity. However, it's very low on internal validity because you're not controlling for anything. You cannot infer cause and effect. You'll see this used by attorney advertising. You'll see it used by consumer product safety, gun control, workplace safety, television, advertisers. Again, a great example is to evaluate the impact of legislation such as seatbelt use, because for a long time, seatbelts were not mandatory, then they were. Then they could look at effect on accidents. Another type of design is longitudinal and cross-sectional designs. Now, longitudinal designs are great, especially in developmental psychology, to follow changes over time. So maybe you want to see changes in learning with a specific subject pool. So what you do here is basically follow people over time, and you assess different people at the same time point. So with longitudinal designs, you're following a group of people over a long period of time. This could be 10 years, 5 years, months, and you're following the same group of people. Now with cross-sectional designs, you have different people assessed at the same time point. And cross-sectional approaches typically involve people with varying ages or some kind of important developmental characteristic. So instead of following people in a longitudinal design from maybe birth to 60, you just get people at different age groups at one time point in a cross-sectional design, and you compare those individuals. Now, there are some issues with this because sometimes just the passage of time, there's changes in maturation in individuals. So if you're looking at kids and learning, kids develop quickly. Their cognitive functions develop quickly. So there's that maturation aspect. They also take a lot of time and a lot of money to do. They could take years, and you need a lot of funding. Also, too, people drop out. So when you see experimental mortality, you know that people drop out of studies all the time. This could be because they don't want to be in it anymore. They could pass away. Especially with longitudinal designs, if you're following people for 10, 20 years, life happens. The other issue is when you give somebody a measure over and over again, they might learn the measure and do better the next time. So there's always that effect of repeated measurements. Now, the great thing about cross-sectional designs is they save a lot of time because you can just do different cohorts of people at the same time point. It's a lot less effort So that's good because, you don't want to follow people around for 60 years. That's a lot, or 20 years. That's a long time. The other issue, though, is sometimes cohorts from generations differ. So there's generational effect, that culture that might play a role in a different generation. So that could bias your results. That's a negative. So this is a quasi-experimental approach, and it focuses on naturally occurring groups. And it's fundamentally correlational, and it gives no confirmation about causality. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.